There's a video from GameSpot regarding game difficulty, which is rather interesting. The video talks about dynamic difficulties and how Cuphead is a pretty damn hard game, just like a lot of game journalists have said in recent times. And it's so much of a broken clockwork of a topic that honestly at this moment, the one thing that I need to say for all of these game journalists is this one simple message. But the thing that I find interesting is the lengths that some of these game journalists go through to basically justify the arguments that Cuphead is a pretty damn difficult game, and game developers should feel bad for excluding players who are not skilled enough. Guys, for the record, I died 766 times. I've beaten the game, beaten the entire first island on Expert, 2 of which are S ranks, and I'm on the process of beating it again on Expert, which is going to be tough and will give me hundreds more deaths, but I will do it. That does indeed show that I am horrendous at this game, but just because you're horrible doesn't mean you can't beat it. If I can do it, I'm sure you guys can. You are older and more experienced in gaming than I am, but it appears that you want to talk about how game difficulty needs to be more inclusive, which is again pretty freaking odd. Not every game is inclusive for everyone, and Cuphead is certainly not for everyone. Now the video asks one significant question.
When Moldenhauer mentions a sufficiently skilled player, what does he mean? What's the metric for measuring player ability? Who's to say that Cuphead will eventually click for everyone who buys and plays it?
Well, the game sold 1 million copies in the first 2 weeks. This game clicks to pretty much everyone. So yep, I guess one of the main appeals for the game is not only its art style, but its punishing difficulty as well. That shows to us that this sort of thing is appealing for most people. If you want to go even further, just check out the Steam reviews and how it's overwhelmingly positive. That shows to us that everyone loves Cuphead for what it is, including its punishing difficulty. That should be the mark that this game is accessible to everyone. That alone should be the mark that yes, everyone loves this game. Everyone plays this game. So I don't know what other arguments you have left, GameSpot, considering that the news that Cuphead reached 1 million in sales was in October 13th. Your article was in October 16th. So I want you to talk about why Cuphead is somehow not accessible when millions of people own it already.
Cuphead does provide the option to play levels on a simple mode. Bosses have fewer hit points and will actually skip some of their attack sequences altogether. It bars less dexterous players from seeing everything the game has to offer. What's more, you can't play the last 10% or so of Cuphead if you haven't beaten every previous boss on the regular difficulty.
Yes. If you're not skilled enough, you're never going to pass. Somebody made this pretty interesting take in Cuphead, and I want you all to read it.
Here's why Cuphead is a right-wing hero. Cuphead inspires people to get good. When people get good and they beat Cuphead, they feel confident. When people feel confident, they no longer feel the need to depend on the welfare state to go earn their bread. When people earn their bread, they become protective of what they worked so hard to earn, so they oppose welfare policies.
This is so funny. Perfect. I love it. Brilliant take, Vinicus. Brilliant take. And yes, come to think of it, I guess this GameSpot video is indeed an exercise to conduct welfare policies, as in, make video games more accessible to everyone who cannot play them. Please?
But it does raise a few loaded questions. Do developers owe it to consumers to show them their entire game, no matter the player's skill level?
Somebody made this great comparison in the comments. Guitars do not play themselves. You have to play them, and you have to be really good in order to produce good music. Same thing goes with video games. I think we should end the discussion right there, but you clearly have more things to say.
This is a problem inherent to video games as a medium. Outside of ticket prices, movies don't usually bar you from seeing everything they have to show. Museums don't test you before each new exhibit, and if you want, you can skip to the final page of the next book you read.
But you see, you cannot make that comparison. You are assuming that everyone can get through every movie 100% all the way to the end. No, lots of people stop watching certain movies midway through for many different reasons. Hell, there are people who chose to not even watch certain movies because the movies do not appeal to them or many other reasons. See, I'm not a fan of horror films that involve ghosts. I like those that involve monsters, aliens, zombies, or even serial killers because those are at least real and tangible. Ghosts are a lot more abstract, and a lot of times they're either unbeatable or overpowered. What do I do with horror movies involving ghosts? I don't watch them. Simple. Now, I'm very sure that there are people who are into these sorts of things, and if they are, good for them, more power to them. But I just cannot stomach your ghost movies. They are just not for me. Should I make ghost movies less scary so that it can appeal to me? No, I want ghost movies to appeal into those who love ghost movies. I want it to have a target demographic instead of a vague, this movie will appeal to everyone sort of mentality. So when you go into Cuphead and expecting it to be a cheerful, nice game, then go play the simple version. If you're going to miss a huge chunk of the game's content, too freaking bad. Either watch someone else play the game or you need to get good. But then you say that since watching someone else playing the game is not playing, well, which one is it? Do you want to play the game or not? If you want to play the game, play them, die, and get good. Millions of people can get through this game just fine. Why can't you? But the ultimate question is, whose fault is this? Is it the fault of the game or is it the fault of the player for not getting good? Well, there are many games out there with unfair difficulties, but Cuphead isn't one of them. The game is challenging, but it's also fair on its challenge. It has never pulled off a cheap move to destroy the player. It doesn't hate the player at all. It gives them a fair enough challenge for them to overcome. Again, if I can beat this game, I am sure you guys can.
But regardless, the game does spark an intriguing conversation. So I decided to look at how other games handle difficulty, how developers found creative loopholes to the problem, and how some games turn the idea of difficulty on its head entirely.
At this moment, the video talks about dynamic difficulties and how some games handle difficulties. I'm gonna show one example, and that is Resident Evil 4, one of my favorite games of all time. If you guys don't know, Resident Evil 4 adjusts its difficulty depending on how skilled you are, and the game doesn't tell you. If you are absolutely fantastic at this game, the game will give in more zombies to kill. If you die a lot, the game will decrease the number of zombies. As someone who pretty much 100% this game back in the PS2, finding out that the game decreased the number of zombies feel really bad. I feel kind of disgusted. The game shouldn't have done that in my opinion. I think the game should be just what it is. The game has 3 difficulty options already, at least in the PS2 version, and one of them is unlockable. I don't want this particular game to pamper me. I want this game to challenge me somehow, and the game is already challenging in and of itself. There are other examples, sure, but I don't want to waste too much time. I think Resident Evil 4 is enough. I do, however, want to say that there are also games that shame you for picking the easy option, and I always love them. Remember Doom's I'm too young to die option? What about Wolfenstein? In Metal Gear Solid 3, there's the easy gun, which is available on the very easy difficulty, and is also obtainable in the harder difficulties if you collect all the plants and animals in the game. Or what about Metal Gear Solid 5's Chicken Hat, which basically prevents enemies from seeing you within their vision at the cost of making Snake look like an idiot?
And this all leads back to Cuphead. Is it good game design to bar less skilled players from advancing to the end of that game?
Yes, Cuphead is a challenging game that expects you to be good. And let me tell you people, I am not good at this game. My death count is a representative of that. But regardless of how many times I died in this game, I persisted. It's a game that requires you to be good in order for you to advance the level. And it's not like the game uses cheap tactics. The game is fair at its challenges. So the problem lies only in one person, and that is you. If you say that it's bad design, then you would have pointed out specifics in where the game is being unfair to you, or certain parts in which the game has a high difficulty spike. In my opinion, the bosses in the third island are significantly easier than the previous 2, and this includes the Devil and King dice. So again, you can do this.
Should developers account for numerous playstyles when molding their visions? Or should they focus on a smaller subset of people who want a very specific experience, regardless of widespread accessibility?
That pretty much depends on the game developer's intentions. There's nothing wrong with developers making games for specific audiences in mind, and there's also nothing wrong with developers making games to be more accessible. The question is whether or not the game is good, and Cuphead is good. It's just that you are bad at it. But instead of actually playing the game and trying to be good like me, you opted to complain about it on the internet. You guys can shame me for how garbage I am at Cuphead. At least I don't complain about how hard this game is on every video. Not even on tweets. I joked about it, but I never said, oh my god, this game is hard. Please someone help me. Please make this game easier. Cuphead is a game with specific audience in mind, and that specific audience happens to target a lot of people. You are not one of them. And that's fine. Seeing you begging for Cuphead to be easier and more accessible is like seeing someone who is not a fan of horror films begging horror films to be less scary. Sorry, but you're missing the point. Cuphead is supposed to be difficult. It's hitting a certain demographic, and you just so happen to be not one of them. No matter how many times you twist this out by either pointing at dynamic difficulties and go, see, this is how you should have done it. No matter how many times you say that this is bad game design without giving any sorts of good arguments on why it is, that still doesn't change the fact that you suck at this game. In conclusion, get good.